the fairy tale is just love enough. Published as a part of the novel Look in Silence. Written by Edin Okanović. Lectured by Sabina Burzović. Read by Filip Jakovac. Drew by Maja Birkić. Music by Amir Okanović. Technical support by Stjepan Gilih. Edited by Edin Hrnić. Made by Do It Yourself. I wrote an entire novel on the subject what is love and how real it is. In fact, is it really possible, or does it exist only in fairy tales? Sometimes in life, the most valuable, most beautiful and the best things are completely simple and almost seem like a fairy tale. When I say fairy tale, I don't think of once upon a time in a kingdom far, far away, like in the children's fairy tales. But I think of those simple things that we can feel and touch with our hands. In that novel, several times I said that our life is often like a novel whose action is unplanned, and each new page can always surprise us and catch unrehearsed. The same thing is in the fairy tales in our lives. Just as in our lives, in the fairy tales there are also pages written by everyday feelings that turn out so indescribably beautiful that we understand them emotionally as a fairy tale. Love is one, if not the only one, such true emotion. To believe in love and then experience it is a fairy tale by itself, and no miracles, even though we expect them, are not needed. Once upon a time, when time was not yet counted, and years did not pass unnoticed, in a distant land far away, there lived one eternal young man. In that land, everything lasted forever, and people did not know beginning or end. That young man had a good heart, and he believed in people. He was poor, but was not greedy for wealth. As an orphan, a child without parents, he was accustomed to tangible modesty and learned that sincere love and friendship are the only feelings in life worth their while. He knew very well that only these feelings can fill a human being with happiness and pleasure. The young man was sick from an incurable disease, and from birth he saw only shadows of people around him, never the detailed lines on their faces. But in spite of his condition, he did not feel miserable because of it and never blamed God for it. As he was growing up, he began to realize that people perceived him as miserable, less because he was almost blind and more because he was materially poor and had no one of his own anywhere. Although he considered it primitive and cruel, it so happened that this permanent enunciation of everything that all others have, accepting that he cannot do what everyone else can, and getting used to all the hypocritical looks of pity, caused deep inside him a fury and despair of question, God, why me? However, as in that country time was not passing, and no one was afraid of ever getting old, there was only death as an end. People were not growing old, and death occurred from an illness or some accident. The young man was a gardener employed by a royal family. This family had a habit to occasionally employ poor people as support staff for humanistic reasons. One day, in the vast garden, he met a young princess who went out to make a circle around the garden on her pony. Although he saw only the outlines of people as shadows recognized only by their voice, the scene of her riding on a white pony was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Her gentle voice, as she greeted him brightly, while pausing by, was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. Just that one moment, in all this endless time, was sufficient for the young man, for the first time in his life, to fall in love with her. Each time they met, through the conversations, walks along the river, and relaxed smiles upon their faces, and in her voice, he was becoming increasingly tied to her and was closing her in his heart. Although someone might think she was a spoiled, rich girl who believed in romantic fairy tales about a prince on a white horse, the princess developed a strong friendship with the young man, and it grew every time they met. He was delighted with her, and this feeling, little by little, turned into infatuation. She did not care for his poverty and his poor eyesight. He told her that to see her beauty he did not need eyes, and that no gold shines more brightly than her glittering eyes. He swore to her that he did not need eyesight to see what her smiles looked like, but although he was hiding it, he started secretly to pray God to give him the eyesight. One nice sunny day, while young man and the princess walked beside a clear river, she holding her beloved pony on the rein, on a path in front of them a large poisonous snake popped up. The princess was startled. He let her pony out of her hand, strongly embraced the young man, and with a trembling voice whispered to him that he should keep her and not let her go out of his arms. Her beautiful white pony was left alone now. He was also scared by the ugly snake, and ran into the river, hoping to reach the other shore. As the water was not deep, the pony believed that river would be easy to cross, but he stumbled upon an underground hole in the middle that started to pull him down into the water. The pony let out a strong roar, while his mane was helplessly sinking under the water. Out of the corner of his eye, for the last time he looked at the princess who cared for him from his birth and loved him as his mother. The beautiful princess burst into tears. And called with the most desperate voice, "No, please God, not him! He's my best friend!" The young man, though he didn't know how to swim, immediately jumped into the river and went to the underground opening, which was devouring the poor animal. As his head was still above the water and the reins were floating on the surface, the young man took them in the hand and moved to the other side of the river, which was much closer, and firmly tied the pony to a tree. 2 or 3 times a strong "hey-oh!" and the pony was saved. Looking at the beautiful animal, now saved, and thrilled by the brave act of the young man, the princess now saw him as her prince, with whom she will always be safe and loved. She realized that he is the one who is always willing to do anything for her without a single moment's hesitation. When the princess's father, the king, heard from his subjects that his only daughter hangs around and fell in love with a poor sick young man, he urged the daughter to talk. The king was not a cruel and arrogant man, but he loved his only child, and he desired for her to always be happy and to have everything she wants in life. He believed that he is always doing what is the best for her, and that young man certainly doesn't fit into the picture. The king wanted her to marry a young, beautiful and virtuous prince from the neighboring kingdom. He was a rich and healthy young man, with whom it was certain that her life would never be difficult, that she would never have to endure something, and she would never miss anything. In addition, the king knew very well that his daughter was a defiant and stubborn girl who is willing to do things just in spite of what she is told to do, and that she is always very smart and mature. So he decided to prevent his newborn love in a slightly uncommon way that he was convinced would succeed. The king invited her for a conversation, and they had a long talk as father and daughter. He told her of his concerns that a sick and poor young man will not be able to provide her everything that she deserves. She responded that this young man is in love with her from the bottom of his heart, that he would love her till the rest of his life, and the only thing he needs to be happy is her love. In the end, the two of them agreed to make a bet. The king will send one of his subjects to the young man, who will present himself as a divine messenger and ask the young man to name one wish. Whatever wish he chooses to say, and God will grant him fulfillment as a reward for rescuing the princess's pony from drowning. If the young man says that his only desire is to love the beautiful princess, the king will agree for the princess to marry him. But if he says any other desire, the princess will marry the prince that her father has chosen for her to marry. The father and the daughter, both sure of winning the bet, swore in the memory of the late queen, the princess's mother who died during childbirth, and whom the princess never saw, to respect outcome of the bet. When a thick, undersized little man, a dwarf actually, in a dark robe with a hood over his head, walked in the boy's dilapidated cottage, he introduced himself as God's messenger, in charge of humanity and charity. He told him that God was delighted with his courage and readiness to help another living being in trouble, and that he was authorized to fulfill his greatest wish, whatever that may be. He asked him, "Come on, tell me what is it that you need the most? What is your greatest wish?" The young man's immediate thought was to answer, "The princess's love," but then stopped and began to think to himself, "Her love is most important to me in this life, and my greatest wish is that she loves me. However, it's not fair that I force her to feel the same. I would rather like that she wishes the same. Anyway, I already have her love, and I believe in it with all my heart. It's better for me to want something that she would want to, something that will help her to love me even more. Maybe that I'm rich. Nah, this would perhaps be something that her father wants, because it would be easier for him that his daughter likes someone who has a lot of wealth, but that would be his desire, not hers. Her only wealth is to have someone beside her who loves her, and he will love her until the moment he closes his eyes at death. Then, maybe I should want to see better. She knows that I'm not healthy and my eyesight isn't so good. If I make my wish, it would not be for my own self, because I'm used to this life, and only eyes that I need to see were hers. But I want to see that cute smile on her face when I look up and say to her, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I do not want ever to stop watching her. She deserves it. She deserves to love someone like that. I will do so. I will wish it for her." A few more minutes of thinking, young man looked at the dwarf, smiled, and replied, "I want to be healthy. I want to see." The dwarf ironically sneered, suddenly turned and rushed away from the boy's home. The young man was left alone, confused, and in anticipation of the wonders of God that were promised him. When he woke up and opened his eyes, he saw everything clearly and without any shadows. Excited, he immediately dressed and washed his face without looking in the mirror, and went to the king's castle to see his princess. Throughout his journey, he kept his eyes closed walking along the path, as he remembered it, because he did not want to see anybody before seeing her. At the entrance to the king's castle, he was stopped by a voice of the dwarf from last night. "Why are your eyes closed, young man?" he asked him. The young man immediately recognized his voice, laughed and replied, "I'm saving my first look for someone special." The little man's voice was a bit sad and he said, "My boy, is it maybe the princess you're thinking of? Ooh, this morning she was engaged to a prince from the neighboring kingdom." The young man froze, and still keeping his eyes closed, with an almost crying voice said, "How? Why? I believed in your love." The little man patted him on the shoulder and said, "Now you see, sonny, you're healed. It'll be easy for you to find another girl who will love you." The boy opened his eyes, and for the first time in his life, tears streamed down his face. "But I do not want to be loved just because I see. I want her to love me just because of me and what I am." The young man turned around and began to go back. At one moment, he spread his arms wide and cried at the top of his voice. "What will I do with all the health of the world when I'm not loved by the only girl I've ever loved?" Young man turned and went away. Since then, no one ever saw or heard anything about him. He just disappeared.